So Ben Stiller was on the Howard Stern show, and he was discussing his new documentary about his parents. His parents was the comedy team of Anne Meara and Jerry Stiller. Um, their peak era was probably it was during Ed Sullivan in the '60s. I wasn't around then, even though y'all think I'm that old. But I remember seeing Anne and Jerry throughout the '70s. And then Jerry ended up on Seinfeld playing George's dad. And as great as he was as George's dad, Jerry Stiller was even better on King of Queens playing Rhea Remini's father, living with her and Kevin James. And I've always felt like Jerry Stiller should have won an Emmy for King of Queens. And in fact, I can't even imagine that show without Jerry Stiller. Like, he was the secret sauce of that show. So I've always been a Jerry Stiller fan. I always liked the fact the relationship between Anne Meara and Jerry Stiller, just the give and take between those two is fantastic. So Ben decided to make a documentary on his parents because his mom died 10 years ago and his dad died 5 years ago, I think. And, it's funny because he had to go through all these tapes because they had all these interviews. They had these guest appearances on TV. They had all these interviews. But then his dad, that no one knew, was secretly taping everything. It was just, there was just loads of just home videos and just recordings all over the place. So it was like a treasure trove of information and video and audio of his parents that he didn't know existed. And it reminded me of the show This Is Us. Like, the one thing I love about that show is you got to see Jack and Rebecca as a young couple, how they met, what it was like when they were parents. And the reason I love that show so much is because there's a lot of times I wish I knew how my parents got together, what my parents like when they first got married, how were they when I was a baby. Like, we don't, when you're a baby, you have no recollection what your parents are talking about. Even when you're a little kid, you're in your own little world. When they're having adult conversations, you're not paying attention. And plus, I would love to see my parents as they were, my mom was younger because my mom was a little jealous and my dad was a ladies' man of sorts. And there's these crazy stories about my mom being jealous of some of these women that my mom thought were trying to get my dad, and my dad was like, "No, we were just friends." I would love to see that footage, but we don't have that type of footage. So for Ben Stiller to go through all this stuff is fantastic. Another thing that came up in this doc is that it was kind of interesting. He said, it'd be one thing if I just focused on my parents, but I got my own stuff being married and being a father. So I focused the camera on myself because him and his wife, Christine Taylor, who played Marsha Brady in the Brady Bunch movie, and she was in Zoolander with Ben. They had broken up for a while when they were married. They had separated, maybe filed for divorce. They're together now. They didn't go through the divorce or anything like that. But he said, I can't put a spotlight on my parents and the issues that they had in their marriage and not look at my own life. And then he talked to his kids, and Ben was interesting because he said, there's things that I thought I would be better than my parents, but I was repeating the same thing. I guess Ben was saying, like, when he was a kid, like, he would be talking to his father and say, "Hey, you're not really paying attention to me." And some guy would come up to him in the street and say, "Oh my God, Jerry, you're so fantastic. I love you in this movie." He's like, "Oh yeah." And then he started talking to the guy. So I think Ben's son kind of said the same thing. He's like, "Hey man, I was really bummed out about college and I had some questions, and then we were at dinner and then somebody came up and said, 'Hey, I loved you in this movie,' and you start talking to the guy." It's like, and Bill's like, "Oh crap, I'm doing the same thing my parents did to me or my father did to me." So it's really good because on one hand you get to see how important how important Jerry and Ann was as a comedy team, the struggles that they had because Anne wanted to be a serious actress, but their bread and butter was this comedy thing because that was Jerry's thing. His mom's alcoholism, how she recovered from that, and then also Ben's life overall, being a father and a husband and trying to balance everything. And it's kind of hard. Like, what do you do if you're Ben Stiller, right? You're Ben Stiller, and you have these string of hit movies: Zoolander, Dodgeball, Meet the Fockers 2. Like, all these projects, The Cable Guy. The first time I saw him, he had the Ben Stiller show on MTV with Janine Garofalo. But then one of my favorite films still is Reality Bites with him and Ethan Hawke. I love Reality Bites. I love that film so much with because of the triangle between Ben, Winona Ryder, and Ethan Hawke in the movie. And Ben Stiller directed that movie. And then Later on, he just became more of a, something about Mary comedic type guy. But over the past 10 years or so, he's been a fantastic director, as we've seen in Severance. So, I mean, Ben Stiller is a fantastic, fantastic director, fantastic comedic actor, but you still have this private life. You have your private life with your parents who are successes, and then you have your private life with your family, and you're the star of the family. But at the same time, how do you balance your relationship with your wife and your kids? And then his sister looks just like their mom, and she's talked about her jealousy, because it's one thing to have your parents be successful and all this stuff, but now your brother is successful too, and you're not the successful one in the family when it comes to Hollywood. It doesn't say she didn't have a successful life, but when you're seeing your mom and your dad be stars and they have friends like Rodney Dangerfield and all this stuff, and then you see your brother and he's hanging out with Jim Carrey and all this stuff, and now there's you and you have to go to Walmart and to buy some Kleenex. It's like, what the hell? I gotta get a job. It's really interesting. So the documentary on Ben Stiller's parents is on Apple TV. Please check that out and tell me about your parents. Like, what would you, if you can go back and do a This Is Us type TV show where you can kind of get footage of your parents, what stage of your parents' life would you like to see them in? Would you like to see them when they first got together? Would you like to see them how they were like as young parents? Do you want to see them as newlyweds? Do you want to see them when they first had their first fight? How would you like to see your parents?